Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something really fascinating that one of you asked about. What happens when AI sees something totally new?
Yeah, something it wasn't trained on.
Exactly. We've got a source that digs into this by testing AI, specifically AI trained on certain animals, when it suddenly encounters a polar bear.
Right. A classic unknown unknown for the model.
So our mission here is to sort of unpack how AI handles this unfamiliar input and, what this tells us about its current limits.
We're essentially looking at pattern recognition and what breaks down when the pattern is, well, unexpected. The source goes into these specific experiments.
Okay, let's jump right in. Experiment one involves Model A, I think they called it,
Yep, Model A.
trained only on birds, horses, and cats. No polar bears in sight during training. Then they showed a picture of a polar bear
And the results were interesting across 9 different versions of this AI.
all over the map. Right.
Totally. Some said bird, some said cat, some horse. One even classified it as a cloud.
A cloud. Wow. Okay, so what's going on there? Why such inconsistency?
Well, the key thing is the AI doesn't just like give up. It tries to match the polar bear to the closest thing it does know.
Uh-huh.
It breaks the image down into features, right? Fur, shape, maybe color. And it asks, does this look more like the birds I know, the cats, or the horses?
So it's finding some feature that vaguely aligns, even if it leads to a ridiculous answer like cloud. Maybe the whiteness?
Could be. The source calls this a pattern discrepancy error. It's forcing this new data point into an existing but incorrect category.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It finds the corner that fits best, maybe.
That's a really good analogy, actually.
So then they ran a second experiment, Model B. This one knew more stuff.
Yeah. Model B was trained on 47 categories. Lots more animals included, but critically, still no polar bears.
Okay, so a broader knowledge base. How did it handle the polar bear?
More consistency this time. Most of the Model B versions labeled the polar bear as either a horse or a cat.
So still wrong, but less chaotic.
Exactly. More agreement, but notice the types of errors are similar, horse cat. It suggests the same fundamental issue is happening. It's still trying to make that best fit into a known box.
So if it's making these mistakes, how do the researchers, or how could we, spot these errors? How do you know the AI is just making its best wrong guess?
Good question. The source mentions a couple of techniques. One is looking for agreement or disagreement across different models trained the same way.
Like in the first experiment, where they all said different things.
Precisely. That disagreement is a big red flag. Another way is checking the confidence score.
How sure the AI thinks it is.
Right. If one model says 90% sure it's a horse and another says 40% sure it's a cat, that low confidence and inconsistency signals trouble. It suggests the AI is struggling with something unfamiliar.
Okay, now here's the part that really made me pause. Model B, trained on more categories, had better agreement when it was wrong.
Yeah, they mostly agreed it was a horse or a cat.
But the study suggests that Model A, the one with the smaller, less diverse training set, its wild disagreement, actually made it easier to detect that something was wrong. That feels so counterintuitive.
It really does, doesn't it? But think about why. With fewer known categories, Model A, the polar bear is just so different from everything it knows that its attempts to classify it are scattered. It's clearly out of its depth.
Okay.
With Model B, because it knows more animals, it might find features in the polar bear that are a closer match to, say, a horse or a cat, even though it's still wrong.
So more models might latch on to that same close enough wrong answer.
Exactly. They converge on the same incorrect classification, maybe even with higher confidence. And that agreement can actually hide the fact that the AI is fundamentally misinterpreting a novel input.
Wow. So less data diversity sometimes makes errors more obvious.
It's a subtle but important point about error detection.
So for everyone listening, this really underscores that AI, even complex AI, isn't magic. It struggles when faced with things truly outside its experience. It doesn't automatically flag new thing, it tries to make it fit.
And just because it gives an answer, even confidently, doesn't mean it understands the input, especially if that input is novel. We need to be aware of these, blind spots.
Definitely. So wrapping this up, AI tries to fit the unknown into known patterns, which leads to errors. More training data helps refine classifications within known areas, but doesn't inherently solve the novel input problem.
And sometimes, counterintuitively, a less diverse training set might make these pattern discrepancy errors easier to spot because the wrong answers are more varied.
Okay, final thought for you to consider. What does this match to the closest known behavior mean for things like, say, medical AI looking at scans, or self-driving cars.
Yeah, what are the unexpected polar bears those systems might encounter on the road or in a patient's data? And how do we build systems that can better recognize true novelty instead of just defaulting to the least wrong known category?
Something important to mull over. That's all for this deep dive.